before barbells, before protein shakes, before gym memberships and personal trainers, there were men who could lift boulders the size of cars, bend iron bars with their bare hands, and perform feats of strength that modern athletes with all their science and equipment still cannot replicate. Who were these men? How did they build bodies like that? And why, with everything we know today, can we not produce strength like theirs? That mystery is what we are going to explore today. Let's go back to ancient Greece. Around the 6th century BC, there was a man named Milo of Croton. He was a 6-time Olympic champion in wrestling, a record that stood for centuries. But it wasn't just his wins that made him legendary. It was how he trained. According to historical accounts, Milo began carrying a newborn calf on his shoulders every single day. As the calf grew, Milo grew stronger alongside it. By the time the calf became a full-grown bull, Milo was carrying hundreds of pounds on his back like it was nothing. Modern sports scientists have a name for this principle today. They call it progressive overload, the foundation of every serious strength program in the world. Milo discovered it 2,500 years ago, by accident. But Milo is just the beginning. In medieval Scotland, young men didn't go to gyms. They went to the fields. Highland games, competitions in stone lifting, log throwing, and boulder carrying were not just sport. They were survival. The strongest men in the clan protected the village. There's a stone still sitting in Dinnie, Scotland, called the Dinnie stones. 2 granite boulders connected by iron rings. Combined weight, 332 kilograms. That's 733 pounds. In 1860, a man named Donald Dinnie lifted both stones simultaneously and walked with them. He was a farmer. His training was manual labor and competition. For 111 years, nobody could repeat what Donald Dinnie did. It took until 1971 for another man to lift those stones. And that man, weight-trained specifically for it. A 19th century farmer beat modern athletes training with modern equipment by over a century. How? Here's where it gets strange. When researchers study historical records, paintings, and physical descriptions of pre-industrial men, a pattern emerges. These men weren't just strong. They were built differently. Bone density measurements taken from skeletal remains of ancient humans show cortical bone thickness significantly greater than modern humans. In some cases, 40 to 50% denser. Denser bones mean stronger attachment points for muscles. Stronger attachment points mean more force production. We are literally becoming physically weaker as a species. And the men who lived in an era without any of our modern advantages, no protein powders, no gyms, no coaches, no recovery science, had bodies our science is still struggling to fully understand. Jump forward to the late 1800s. Quebec, Canada. A man named Louis Cyr is performing in traveling shows across North America. His documented feats include backlifting 4,337 pounds, an entire platform loaded with men. Resisting 4 horses pulling in opposite directions, 2 attached to each arm. Pressing 273 pounds overhead with 1 finger. And lifting 588 pounds with 1 hand off the floor. These lifts were witnessed by thousands of people, documented by newspapers, and verified by officials. They are not myths. Louis Cyr's training? He grew up on a farm in rural Quebec. He worked physically from childhood. He ate enormous amounts of food, reportedly over 10 pounds of meat per day. He trained by lifting heavy objects, pulling wagons, and competing against other strong men. No periodization. No macros. No coach. Just work, food, and iron will. Modern strongmen with access to everything science can offer have not surpassed most of his records when accounting for body weight. So what is the actual explanation? Why were these men so impossibly strong? Researchers have identified several factors. First, manual labor from childhood. These men didn't start training at 16 in a gym. They were carrying, lifting, pulling, and pushing from the time they could walk. The nervous system adaptations that come from decades of physical work are fundamentally different from years of gym training. Second, movement variety. A medieval farmer didn't do the same movements repeatedly. He lifted awkward objects, carried uneven loads, worked in unusual positions. This built strength across the entire body in ways that structured gym training simply does not replicate. Third, necessity. When your life depends on your physical output, your body responds differently than when you're training for aesthetics. Psychological research on performance under high stakes consistently shows outputs that exceed what training alone produces. Fourth, and most mysterious, genetic selection. For thousands of years, the strongest men survived and reproduced at higher rates. The weakest did not. We have spent the last 150 years of industrial civilization reversing that selection pressure entirely. But here's what science still cannot fully explain. There are documented cases, not myths, not legends, actual verified accounts, of ordinary people performing extraordinary feats of strength in moments of crisis. A mother lifting a car off her child. A man holding a collapsing structure long enough for people to escape. Soldiers in combat performing physical acts that should be biomechanically impossible. These are not trained athletes. These are ordinary people. Which raises a question researchers are actively studying today. Is human strength actually limited by our muscles? Or is it limited by our brain? Current evidence suggests the latter. The nervous system places a hard governor on muscular output to protect the body from tearing itself apart. Elite strength training, and apparently life or death necessity, can partially override that governor. The strongest men before the gym era may have simply lived lives that kept that governor lower than ours. They weren't superhuman. We may be the ones who are limited. The practical lesson from these men is not complicated. Move heavy things consistently. Eat enough to fuel the work. Start early and never fully stop. Build strength from varied, real-world movement, not just machines. Every principle in modern strength science can be traced back to men who figured it out by living it. We gave it names, built labs around it,